That's where he's place of birth.
Barbados.
Right. What was it like?
Barbados. From what I remember of Barbados, like I came here when I was 7, so my early memories of Barbados are quite sparse. However, schooling, I remember. I remember diving, going down. We used to have like, we didn't have a deep water harbour back in the day. So when the ships used to come in, we had to dive for the silver dollars and stuff like that. So I used to do that. I played truant from school. Barbados, yeah. As I said, I don't really remember that much of Barbados.
So from what you can remember, happy memories?
Oh, beautiful memories. I mean, like I cried, I think, for the first 3 or 4 days when I left to come here, you know.
Okay. Who came over first?
My mother came here first, and then I came the year later. My mum was going to come for 5 years. I think like most of the West Indians that came for a short period, but of course then she had my sister, my brother, and I think once you starting a family in a country, you can't go back to your place of origin because you're now in the system.
Why did your mum come to England?
My mum came to England because, first of all, it was for economic reasons, because back in the day they were told that they could come to England and it's a better life, etc., etc. And also, to be honest, she came to leave my father, to get away from my father. My father was a bit of a rumhead, we call a rumhead, and he was a bit violent, as they were in those days. So it's one of the reasons she came. So it was economic and also to get away from the violence.
So when you heard the news that you was coming to England, how did you feel?
Well, how I felt when I first heard the news I was coming to England, it was like, whoa. I was happy because I was coming to see my mother, obviously. I was really happy. But then I was sad because I was leaving Barbados and I knew that I was actually leaving the island. Because I was 7 and I knew what was happening, you know. So, yeah, it was a bit of a traumatic time, actually.
So what did you expect of England?
Well, what did I expect? I really didn't know. I just knew it was a mother country because we was brought up to believe that England was a mother country. What else did I expect of it? I suppose I expected to find gold in the streets and the streets paved with gold and, you know, everybody's living a really happy, beautiful life. You know, much one better life than what we were living in Barbados. Little did we know.
So when you came over, what was it, a airplane or?
No, I came on a ship, so it took 21 days to sail from Barbados to England. So what they did, back in the day, most of the ships that came were cargo ships. So, and then they were decked out for passengers. So there was about, say, I don't know, say 200 children. And each cabin had a nanny that would look after us. So we were looked after by a nanny. So we'd have three children in the cabin and one nanny. And that's who looked after us as we came over. So that was 21 days. So we went to Aruba, we stopped off in Jamaica, Trinidad, and all these things, picking all these children up coming from all these different islands, coming to England to come into the parents.
Can you remember the year you came?
Yeah, I came 1958.
All right. So when you reached England, were you glad to see your mum?
Oh, wow. That was something else when I saw my mum. It was like everything I wanted, everything was experienced. Yeah, I was really happy to see her. Because she came with her sister, so the two of them came down to pick me up from Southampton.
Did you came by yourself, was it?
Yeah, I came over. Yeah, I was on my own. 21 days. What did I think of England when I first came? Wow, that's a good question. Well, it was a summertime when I came, so it was quite bright and breezy, and the children were playing out and everything. And that was okay because it was like 6 weeks holiday when I got here, so it was all right. Going to school in England was a different kettle of fish altogether. Had many a fight at junior school because of our colour. We had to defend ourselves and defend other children that were around us that couldn't, maybe a lot of the girls that were being picked on, we used to have to defend them because they used to call us all kind of horrible names. They used to call us, I don't need to go and say what they are, but they used to call us some horrible names. So we used to fight a lot when we got here. I thought, because in Barbados we didn't really have a colour thing as such. There wasn't really a colour bar, or there wasn't really racism as such. So when I came here and found and was introduced to racism, the first time someone called me a monkey, I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know, where's the monkey? You know what I mean? I just didn't get what they were talking about. So England, it was a weird experience. I remember my mum buying me a duffel coat and having to put the duffel coat up and wearing it up so that if anybody attacked me, they'd have to come from the front, because they couldn't really tell if I was black or white for having a duffel coat up, because they used to get a lot of people, they used to throw milk bottles at us and all kind of things going down the street. People used to spit at us, all kind of things they used to do. So a kind of a way of protecting myself was to put my duffel coat up. So if anything, they had to come from in front so I could actually see them. So if my hood was up, they couldn't tell if it was black or white. So then they would have to come. And then when they came to the front, then we'd deal with it. So that was England. That was my first experience of England, having to fight, yeah.
Schooling, how long did you spend in school?
Oh, I went to Webster Street School in Moss Side. Then I went to a school in Withington called Old Moat Secondary Modern. I left when I was 15, cannon fodder for the labour market. Didn't really do anything for the labour market.
Was there anything positive in school you can remember?
School. I think I was just, I don't know, I was one of those people that was at the back of the class. And to be honest, I don't think I got anything that positive from school. I think they told me that I would never really, because I was always told on my things. I used to get, like when I got my papers and stuff, like my report card and report, it would always be like, I'd always get like B's, very rarely C's. I never got really A's, but I always used to get loads of B's and B's and B's, B plus, B's. And they was always saying Winston could do better. If Winston didn't talk so much in the class, if Winston didn't clown around, he could do better. Winston could do better. And I think that the reason that is because one of the reasons I felt bad was because when I left Barbados, the school that I was in Barbados was actually one of the second highest schools in Barbados, yeah. And so when I came here, I was actually ahead of the children in the junior school here. I could read, I could write, I could spell much better than the children in the class that I came to. But because I spoke Bayesian, and because of whatever reason, they never took it on board. So we were I was left behind. I won't say we, I was left behind, and was never really encouraged. I had a couple of teachers at senior school tried to encourage it. I remember the maths teacher encouraging me, and I remember the English teacher, and we used to have a thing called domestic science, which was we used to learn cooking and stuff like that. And I remember her, Mrs. Burton. I'll never forget her. I always remember her name. Yeah, she was very encouraging. She always said, Winston, you'd always make a good chef. You can cook. You're good. Because the reason I could cook is because my mum, I had to cook at home. Yeah, so when my mum went to work, I had to do the cooking for me and my sister and them. So when they came home, there was food, so she'd prepare it. I'd have to cook it when she came home, so she'd have something to eat. So I was used to being in the kitchen. I was used to, from I was from Barbados. I remember cooking on the wood stove, where we have a stove outside, and outside we call it outside cooking. And schooling, if I jump forward a bit, I got my degree when I was 53. So I went to Salford Uni and did a performing arts and film degree when I was 49, came out when I was 53. And that's basically my education, you know. So I went to, because I always thought I was thick, because at school they never really gave us no encouragement. but I was dyslexic, you know, and I didn't know that I was dyslexic until I went to university. So I lived all my life thinking, well, I wasn't quite up to scratch like everybody else when it comes to the work, the school work and stuff like that. But yeah, but then when I went to uni, I found out that I wasn't thick, you know, and it was a bit of a shock, actually, because I thought maybe if I had someone that had pushed me a bit more, or if I'd have listened to my mother a bit more when she was telling me to stay in education, do your education, get this, get that, maybe things would have been different, but I didn't listen to her, so I had to wait till I was 49 to get to university, you know.
Why did you go to uni, really?
Well, one of the reasons I went to uni is so that my children, my grandchildren, my great-great-great-grandchildren, whoever comes after me can see that I was the first in my family to go to uni. And when I went to university, they asked me why I wanted to come uni, and I told them in 1,000 years' time they'll be able to look and see that's where it all started, you know. And my daughter, she's at uni now. She's done uni, you know. She's doing a very good job, and now my son's at uni. So I'd like to think that I was the one that set that ball rolling.
Can you remember your first job?
My first job? Oh, what was my first job? In fact, I think my first job was at H&A Moss, which was in Moss Side. It was a warehouse. Yeah, H&A Moss. That was a warehouse in Moss Side. And it was a clothing warehouse, a textile warehouse. So I was like the van boy. And then I think the next job after that, I worked in a laundry. I was a laundry boy. But you see, back in the day when we left school in the 60s, if you lost a job at, say, 12 o'clock, you could, by 1:30, you'd have another job. It's not a problem. Wasn't a problem. So to us to work, we always thought that's how it would be for the rest of our lives. You'd always be able to get a job, you know. So I didn't really take it on board, my educational thing.
Partying in Manchester. You used to go lots of parties?
Oh, partying in Manchester, well, yeah. Yeah, we used to, yeah, I suppose when I first started partying in Manchester was when I was really young. We used to have a place called the Monton House. And I remember my mother always saying, because I had to walk past the Monton House to get to my junior school. And I remember my mum always saying to me, do not go in that place, do not go in there. And I couldn't wait to get in there. The first time, so they used to throw me out. I was about 8 or 9 or something like that. I used to go. And it was a place where all the guys used to hang out and the women used to hang out. The women of the night used to hang out there and the guys of the night used to hang out there. And I used to go there. And they would always like run me out and chase me out. Oh, you can't come in here, you're too young, too young. I think after about the 50th time of them telling me to come out, I think they got fed up and they said, you know, in the end, oh, you know what, you can just come in. So that was interesting, actually, that you should ask me that, because that was like my first introduction to cash. And I saw men spending vast amounts of money. I mean, hundreds of pounds on a dice table. And in those days, you could buy a house for that amount of money. So you could buy a house for £300, £400, £500. And I'm watching these guys gamble £500, £200 on one throw of a dice. So when my mum and them are coming home from work and I hear they're bawling, they're crying, and she's crying how hard she's working, how she can't make ends meet and things, I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to go to work because it's easier for me to go on the street and be like the guys in the street. So that kind of got me into the party life. So I think I ran away from home when I was about 16, 17. Yeah, I was 16 when I ran away from home. Because of the party life and because my mum wanted me to be in at a certain time of night. And of course I didn't want to be in that time of night because all the English children could stay out to whatever time they wanted. And I couldn't. So what happened was with me, I kind of like, the first time I got into trouble with the law, I kind of said, I don't want to go back home, I don't want to go back home. So I actually asked them to put me in care, thinking that I'd be better off in care because I could do what I want. not realising that if my mum was telling me to be in for 7, the care home was telling me to be in for 6. So I went from the fire to the frying pan, from the frying pan to the fire. So there was all those things, you know, when I look back and think about how my life was as a youth growing up. You know, got into a bit of trouble when I was young. Not a bit, I did Borstal recall. Not proud of it, but it's a fact. Did Borstal recall. Done a couple of jail sentences. But I think when my last jail sentence was in 1975, I came out of jail in 1975, and they told me that I would come back to have, because I said I'm not having my breakfast, and they said to me, you will come back to have that breakfast. And what year are we in, 2020? I've never been back. So to me, it was just something that I had to do. I had to learn it for myself, you know, how to survive in England, because I was the eldest in my family. So I didn't really have any role models that I could go off. So the only role models I knew were the guys in the street. I mean, that was quite serious. So that's where that was. So yeah, education. Education was a good part of my life on the street. Most of my education I got was from the street.
Can we stay in the street for a while?
Yeah.
How many times have you been in a lockup, prison or?
I did Borstal recall. I did a 6 months. No, I did a 3 months in the Isle of Man for weed. All this is for weed and burglary. I used to do burglary. I mean, as a kid, that was it. So I done Borstal recall, a 3 months, a 6 months, a 18 months, and that was it. Once I'd done the 18 months. And the reason what made me stop going to jail was there was a lad in there. When I was there, he left about 3 months into my sentence, he left. And about 4 or 5 months at the end of my sentence, he came back. And I looked at him. He was a white guy, and I looked at him, and I said to myself, that's going to be you if you don't watch yourself. So I came out, and I was fortunate enough someone told me about Copenhagen, and I went to Copenhagen for 2 weeks, and I stayed 10 years. The reason I stayed 10 years was because I didn't really want to stay in Manchester, because I knew that if I came back to Manchester, I probably would go back to jail. And I didn't like jail. I didn't mind the little bits of the Borstal recall, but then once I did that one proper jail sentence, that 18 months doing a year, that really shook me. I thought, you know what, nah, it was pure men in the jail, and I'm not being funny, but maybe if there was women in there, I might have gone back. But you know, it's pure men, and I'm not being funny. It's not my thing, so I didn't go back. And up to touch wood to date, yeah, I've never even had a parking fine. Never since then.
Okay. All right. For who don't know, Copenhagen. Where's Copenhagen?
Oh, Copenhagen's in Denmark.
So you end up from Manchester and go to Denmark.
Well, what happened was, how I ended up in Copenhagen was, I used to DJ at the Polytechnic on a Wednesday night, a reggae and soul night, and when I went to jail when I got my 18 months, I went to jail. When I came out, that slot that was still open. So I said to Tim Llewellyn, I'll never forget Tim. I said to him,
who is Tim Llewellyn?
Right, Tim Llewellyn is a lad who was the student union. He ran the students' union. He was the head of the student union. So, of course, he was at uni for 3 years. I went to jail for a year. So when I came out, he was still at uni, because he was, you know. So I asked him about it. He said, yeah, it's still open. So there used to be a lad that used to come in, and Bob Marley at the time was I Shot the Sheriff, was very popular at the time. And every time, and before I went to jail, he used to come in and say, oh, play Bob Marley, play I Shot the Sheriff. So once I started it, the same night that I started, he walked in. And he said to me, where have you been? So I explained to him what happened. I went to jail. And he said, have you got Bob Marley? I said, yeah. And I said, what about you? He said, I've just come back for a place called Copenhagen. I said, where about in Holland? Is that? I didn't even know where it was. He said, no, it's in Denmark. So I went, okay. So I got a tax rebate. And I went for 2 weeks. And because I went to jail for weed, along other things, but mainly weed, when I got to Copenhagen, I saw that everyone was smoking weed and the police would walk around with guns and they weren't doing nothing to them. They didn't bother them. So I thought, you know what? I've just come out of jail for weed. So I'm not going back to England. I'm going to stay. So that's one of the main reasons that I stayed in Copenhagen, because I could smoke weed freely. And
so in Copenhagen, was it like kind of multicultural?
At the time, right, so Copenhagen at the time, we had, there was a few black guys there. There was about 3 of us from the Caribbean that I knew. No, 4 of us from the Caribbean that I knew. And then the rest were from Africa and America. However, the lads from America and Africa, they had a culture gap. So when I say a culture gap, they didn't really know how to deal with Europeans. Yeah, because a lot of the Americans weren't used to dealing with Europeans, and a lot of the Africans weren't used to dealing with Europeans. But with us, the 3 of us that were there, 4 of us, including myself, we all lived in England, so we were used to dealing with Europeans. So it was easy for us. I got on like a house on fire. It was, yeah, I'd stayed 10 years.
So. Girls, party life, jokes?
The party life was a good, I had a good life in Copenhagen. Yeah, a good life. Wow. There's so much I could say about Copenhagen, but I'm not going to. I want to say it, but I can't. I'll get too many people in trouble. So party life, yeah, we had like Third World, Earth, Wind and Fire. Who else was we over there with? A lot of jazz musicians used to come over. We had a place called Montmartre, which was like a jazz. It's a jazz cafe, restaurant, dining hall. It was this place. It was the most amazing place. That was good. Copenhagen. Wow.
So would you say you were one of the top men back in those days?
What, in Copenhagen?
Yeah, because
I was a black guy, yeah, because they said to me when I first went there doing what we were doing that it wouldn't work because I was a black guy and no one would actually deal with us because we were black. And it turned out that it was totally wrong because it ended up that, yeah, a lot of us, we used to fly out all over. We'd go to, like, say, the airport on a weekend and see which is the next flight leaving the country. And we'd say, right, we can catch that flight, and we'd just go and book it and we'd fly to Brazil, wherever, Iceland, wherever in the world we wanted to fly. We'd just fly out and just do it and go away for the weekend and come back. So, yeah, it was...
So would you be known to the police as stand out as a black man?
No, because no, because I wasn't on that level to be on the street. We were more like, how can I put this? We were more undercover, put it that way. Yeah, we didn't floss or nothing. We didn't need to floss. You know, because everyone around us, everyone who knew us and knew what we were doing, so we didn't really need to, because we were making good money, so we didn't need to really, you know, we'd sail, as I said, we'd go on holidays. You know, I had a friend that had this massive big schooner, and we would sail from Denmark to Portugal on it, and sail from Denmark to France and Italy, and we were just on this massive big schooner and just.
Yeah, what age were you then at that time?
Well, oh God, I was what, 20, how about 24, 25?
So basically it was a nice time.
Yeah, it was, honestly, it was, I mean, I went back to Copenhagen about, just before lockdown, And to be quite honest, I wouldn't live there now. It's totally changed. It's very racist. Where when I was there was a little bit of racism, but it wasn't the way it is now. You know, it was. I mean, because you'd get like people would say to the girl that I was living with, "What are you doing with him? You know, are Danes not good enough for you? You know, what are you doing with the black guy? You know, that kind of things like that." However, from what I'm seeing on the news and when I went back and the way people looked, it's totally different now. I think because of the immigration and everything else, the world's a totally different place. It's not as nice as it was. We used to have a ball. We had a ball. Back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, early 80s, England and the world was a nicer place. You know, we lost our freedom in the 80s. I'd say at the beginning of the 80s, all freedom as we knew it went.
Well, I'm getting two different information from you. But back in those days, it was more racist.
No. I would say there's more racist now, right? Or it's more in your face now. I can't say that it's more then or more now. All I can say that racism now is more in your face. I think racism now, well, in America, back in the day, or where in America, you always got racism. They told you to your face, "We don't like you, we don't like you." Where in England, it was more like, "Oh, we don't mean you. Yeah, we mean that person. We don't mean you, you're okay." But then you know that when you walked away, you were just the same as the person that they... But now, I find that England and Europe in general is more like America. They're more likely to look at you and call you whatever they feel like calling you, thinking that they can get away with it, because it just seems to be the norm these days. You know, if you got your politicians talking about letterboxes, this, and calling people pickaninnies and things like that, what do you think the public's going to do? You know, it's, you know, they follow from the leaders down. It's not from up. It's not from down up. It comes from up down. So whatever the leaders are saying, or whatever the people in the country is going to do, so you can always tell the value of a country by the way it treats its poor and homeless.
Okay. Why did you leave Copenhagen, and what was it like when you came back to England? Did it change? Or?
Right. So I left Copenhagen. I came back for 3 months, and then I just got caught up because when I left here, there was the Apollo in Manchester. We set up a thing called travelling tours, which was working with rock and roll bands. So we used to work with rock and roll bands. So when I came back, that had become very successful. So I started working at the Apollo with a rock and roll band. So then I started going out on tours started working with the Stones, Fleetwood Mac, Dave Bowie, Prince, Arrested Development. I went out on tour with Arrested Development, went out on tour with Oswald, went out on tour with Dion Carroll, a couple more, I can't remember, a few more that I went out on tour with. Yeah, I've done a few tours with different bands.
So long those tours last for, like?
Well, they can last from 3 weeks to 2 months, 3 months, depending on how many gigs they've actually been assigned to. Oh, overall, my life, I've had the most amazing life. I remember once we flew to Brazil, and this guy, he was the EO of Shell at the time, and we were flying first class, and we were all laughing and joking. There's 4 of us, and he's like, "How come you young ones can get on this plane and do it?" And we said, "Oh, really?" He said, "I can't afford to do what you've just done. I can't afford to fly away for the weekend and just go away for the weekend and just drop everything." You know, he says, "You've got a better lifestyle than I have." And he was the EO of Shell. So I've had a very, very successful life. And I'm not talking monetary now. you know, because I don't think you should value your success by monetary, because you can have money now and you can wake up in the morning and it's gone because someone's ripped it off, or the stock exchanges fell or something overnight. So money doesn't make a person. It really doesn't. When I was younger, I thought it did, because I wanted that dough and I wanted this, and you know, I've had the Ferrari and I've had this and I've had that, and you know, and at the end of the day, I've got my health, and that's the most important thing, is your health. You know, once you've got your health, you can do anything in this world. You know, there's people out there right now that would give all their billions to be in our position right where we're sat now, and we ain't got no money. We ain't rich. I mean, talking billionaire wise, compared to a billionaire, we ain't got nothing. Yeah, but I know, I'll tell you a little story. I drove for a guy called Prince Fahid. This was, he was I think he was a grandson of Nasser, in Egypt. And yeah, I drove for this man. And the first time I met him, we met him here in Manchester. He came up from Manchester, London. And he was talking, and he came out and he had this turquoise colour blue suit on, shirt, same colour, shoes, turquoise, everything. This man was fetid. And he had this scarf around his neck and everything. And when he started talking, he went in his pocket and he pulled his thing out and he put it to his throat and he started talking. And that's how he talked. He had cancer of the throat. And I looked at him and I thought, you know, for all the billions and millions that you have, I wouldn't swap 1 second for all your money. And that's kind of makes you realise just exactly what your health, don't care how much money you've got, yeah, if you haven't got good health, it's not worth nothing. So me personally, when I slide off the plate or drop off the end of the conveyor belt, call it what you want, I want to go healthy. I want to be healthy. I want to be fit. Yeah, I don't want to go all bent up and in pain. I want to be fit, because we're going to have to go. We're all going to go. Not one person come here and stay.